Hello, everyone. There was a time when the name Haley Joel Osment carried a kind of magic that Hollywood rarely sees twice. A child prodigy whose wide-eyed innocence and hauntingly emotional performances captivated millions across the globe. From the chilling words, "I see dead people" in The Sixth Sense, to his heartfelt roles in Pay It Forward and AI Artificial Intelligence, Osment was once hailed as the future of cinema, a kid whose talent burned so brightly that many believed he was destined to become one of the greatest actors of his generation. But as the years went by, the same fame that once built him up began to slowly consume him. Behind the Hollywood glamour and the critical acclaim lay a painful reality, one of isolation, rejection, personal battles, and the struggle to find identity in a world that had already decided who he was supposed to be. And now, years later, fans are growing deeply concerned because things aren't looking good for Haley Joel Osment. And the story of how Hollywood turned its back on one of its brightest young stars is as heartbreaking as it is revealing. Born in Los Angeles in 1988, Haley Joel Osment's path to stardom was almost predestined. His father, Eugene Osment, was an actor, and his mother, Teresa, was a teacher who nurtured his creative side from an early age. He started acting at just 4 years old after a casting agent spotted him in an IKEA store. That chance encounter led to a commercial for Pizza Hut and, soon after, guest appearances on shows like Walker, Texas Ranger, and Thunder Alley. But it was in 1999, at just 11 years old, that Osment would make cinematic history. His role as Cole Sear in The Sixth Sense didn't just earn him an Academy Award nomination, it made him a cultural phenomenon. The image of that small, pale-faced boy whispering about the dead became one of Hollywood's most iconic moments. Critics called him a genius. Directors said he was born to act. But the darker truth was that even then, Osment was beginning to feel the weight of an industry that idolizes children one day and forgets them the next. Following The Sixth Sense, Osment delivered another powerhouse performance in AI Artificial Intelligence, directed by Steven Spielberg. It was a role that demanded deep emotional maturity, portraying a robot boy who longs to become human. A reflection, perhaps, of Osment's own longing to be seen beyond the Hollywood machine. The film, while ambitious, didn't perform as expected at the box office, and Osment, despite his brilliance, began to feel the sting of disappointment. The expectations placed on him were astronomical. Every new project was compared to The Sixth Sense, and when his films didn't meet those impossibly high standards, critics were merciless. The applause that once echoed around him started to fade, replaced by whispers that his best days might already be behind him. As Osment entered his teenage years, Hollywood's affection for him began to wane. Casting directors, unsure of how to transition his childhood image into adult roles, simply stopped calling. The same face that once sold millions of movie tickets now seemed to be a reminder of a cinematic past. That rejection cut deep. Like many child stars, Osment struggled to reconcile his former fame with the reality of adulthood. He turned to education, enrolling at New York University's Tisch School of the Arts, hoping to rebuild himself away from the cameras. He studied experimental theater, voice, and performance art, diving into the craft that had first inspired him. But behind that academic pursuit was a young man wrestling with depression and a growing sense of invisibility. The industry that once adored him had moved on, and he was left questioning his worth. Then came 2006, a year that would change everything. That summer, Haley Joel Osment made headlines for all the wrong reasons. He was involved in a serious car crash in Los Angeles. The accident left him with a broken rib and a fractured shoulder blade, but the real damage came afterward when he was arrested for driving under the influence and possession of marijuana. For a moment, The world that had once loved the angelic child from the Sixth Sense turned its back completely. Tabloids feasted on the story. Late-night hosts made jokes. Hollywood, which thrives on image, distanced itself from him entirely. For Osment, it was a brutal fall from grace, and he later admitted that this was one of the lowest points of his life. He had gone from Oscar-nominated prodigy to public spectacle today, almost as fans overnight rally behind him with messages of love and hope. Perhaps there's still time for a second act, one not defined by the ghosts of the past, but by the man he's become, flawed, human, and still standing against all odds. After his recovery, Osment disappeared from the spotlight for several years. Many assumed he had quit acting entirely. In truth, he was rebuilding, emotionally, mentally, and professionally. He returned to the stage, performing in off-Broadway productions, honing his craft in smaller, quieter ways. He stopped chasing fame and started rediscovering why he fell in love with acting in the first place. But even as he made slow progress, the industry didn't exactly welcome him back. The problem wasn't his talent, that had never faded. It was the stigma. Hollywood is notoriously unforgiving to former child stars, especially those who stumble publicly. For every actor like Drew Barrymore who manages to reinvent themselves, there are dozens who never recover. In the 2000s, Osment began a modest resurgence with roles in indie films like Tusk, Sex Ed, and Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil and Vile. He also appeared in TV shows like The Boys, What We Do in the Shadows, and Future Man. Fans were thrilled to see him back, but many couldn't help noticing how different he looked. Heavier, with a scruffy beard and tired eyes. Online trolls mocked his appearance, forgetting that he was no longer the innocent boy from the Sixth Sense, but a grown man who had survived Hollywood's harshest realities. Osment later addressed the criticism, saying that the transition from child star to adult actor was never supposed to be seamless. "People forget that I've grown up," he said. "They expect me to still be that little kid, but life doesn't work that way." Despite his resilience, the road hasn't been easy. In recent years, insiders have expressed concern about Osment's health and emotional well-being. Friends describe him as deeply introspective, sometimes withdrawn, and still haunted by the pressures of his early fame. He's spoken candidly about how the entertainment industry's rejection left scars that never fully healed. "When the work stopped coming in, I started questioning everything," he admitted. "It took me years to realize that I didn't have to prove myself to anyone anymore." But even with this newfound wisdom, Osment's career remains in a fragile place. He's no longer the headline-grabbing actor he once was, and while he's found fulfillment in smaller roles and voice acting, the financial and emotional toll of his earlier fame still lingers. There's also a deeper issue that has fans worried: Osment's physical health. While he's never publicly confirmed any medical problems, his sudden weight fluctuations and visibly strained demeanor in recent appearances have sparked speculation about whether the stress of his career struggles has begun affecting him physically. In interviews, he often alludes to burnout, anxiety, and the lingering trauma of being thrust into the spotlight so young. "Fame is a lot for a kid," he once said. "You don't get to understand who you are before the world decides for you." Those words now sound almost prophetic, as if he saw the cracks forming long before they appeared. But perhaps the saddest part of Haley Joel Osment's story is how his extraordinary gift, his ability to express deep emotion, became the very thing that isolated him. His performances were so intense, so real, that audiences never stopped associating him with pain and tragedy. Even today, casting directors often hesitate to put him in lighter roles, typecasting him as the eternal, troubled soul. That limitation has stifled his opportunities, leaving him trapped in a loop of nostalgia for the boy he once was, rather than the man he has become. And yet, through it all, Osment remains humble, grateful, and deeply thoughtful. He's spoken about the importance of perspective, about how he measures success not in fame, but in peace. "I've been on both sides of Hollywood," he said, "and I can tell you, peace is better than attention." As fans look at Haley Joel Osment today, many can't help but feel a mix of admiration and sorrow. Admiration for his resilience, for surviving an industry that chews people up and spits them out, and sorrow for what fame took from him too soon. While he continues to work quietly in television, theater, and independent film, the sparkle that once defined him has dimmed, replaced by a quieter, more reflective energy. The boy who once saw dead people has grown into a man who's seen the death of innocence, the cruelty of fame, and the long, lonely road back to himself. And as rumors swirl about his health, his isolation, and his uncertain future in Hollywood, one thing is painfully clear. Things aren't looking good for Haley Joel Osment, not because he's failed, but because Hollywood did. They failed to protect him, to nurture his gift, and to let him grow at his own pace.